Hello, this is Pam. Today I'm going to be talking about the best advice that I could give for somebody who is newly diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. If we haven't met yet, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And I want to share with you that what I'm going to share with you is not medical advice. It's truly for people that are wanting to recover from multiple sclerosis and are maybe newly diagnosed. And what I'm going to share is solely for educational purposes. I can share this because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I'm going to be sharing my own personal advice. So it is not medical advice. But because I have been able to live MS free for 30 years, and because I have helped and coached over 600 people in their journey back to health in recovering from MS and all different types of chronic disease, I've got some amazing insights that I want to share with you. So for me, because I was able to learn early on that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease and I was able to treat the infections, I was able to recover a lot quicker, and I was able to get full recovery and not to be disabled because I treated the infections early on. The longer we have them, the more populated they become in our body, the more damage they cause. And so early intervention, in my opinion, is incredibly powerful. And we have many documented cases of wellness champions that have recovered. And again, if we've had MS for a longer period of time, we still treat the infections, we still recover. It just takes a little bit more work, but we always are able, if we treat the infections effectively, we are able to stop the progression of the disease and have a lot of recovery. So if we're still walking, it will help tremendously if we treat the infections before they start to damage our nerves any farther. So what I'd like to do is take the next few minutes. I just want to say hello to a few people. Hello, Danielle and Stephanie and Rudy and Lindsay and Maureen and Oksana and Troy and Sophia. There's a lot of you there. So please put your questions in the question box. Please interact with me. If something makes sense, give me a thumbs up, share, like. But what I'd really like to do is, for me, a really big thing, because I've coached so many people, is to get the word out that for people that are newly diagnosed, for them to really understand how important it is to take the right steps early on. It can save so much heartache. So what I'd like to do is over the next few minutes is to kind of talk about, like, when we're newly diagnosed, the information that we get, sometimes it's not always complete, and maybe it isn't intentional, but it's really important to have a true understanding of what we're dealing with. And then I know that it's quite depressing, so please hang in there, and then I'm going to swing back and I'm going to talk about the possibilities of when we treat these infections early on and what we're seeing with our students. So the first thing is, what is multiple sclerosis? Multiple sclerosis is believed to be an autoimmune disease. Our immune system is definitely involved. There is inflammation on various different nerves in different parts of our body. So it can be, there's many nerves. It's like this highway of nerves that run from our brain and our central nervous system to every part of our body. So it can affect us in many, many different ways. So what happens is, what's believed to happen is that if we have a nerve axon, there is myelin sheath, which is a fatty insulation on the nerve fiber, and something causes inflammation. And what we believe in standard of care is that our immune system is involved, and because they can't figure out what's causing the MS, then it's like, well, let's just shut down the immune system. Let's just stop the immune system from fighting whatever's going on. And so we end up with having damage to this fatty insulation, and we end up having a decrease in function, and it can affect us in many, many different ways. So things like cognitive function, our brain function, things like loss of memory, foggy head, depression, anxiety, debilitating fatigue. We find that a lot of people, their first symptoms, often for myself included, was optic neuritis, or it could be some numbness or tingling, etc. But in time, the inflammation affects more and more nerves, we end up with a lot of bladder issues. So the students that I work with, I've spoken to over 700, I'm sure it's more than that by now, people that are suffering with MS. So things like bladder issues, maybe having a spastic bladder or just having to go to the bathroom very often, having urinary tract infections. We also have numbness for sure in different parts of our body, weakness and spasms. Maybe some of you know what the spasticity is. We get like Charlie horses, but they become like permanent in different muscles, especially in our legs. And that spasticity can cause drop foot. So we can end up with poor balance. That's really common, where our balance is really off and we can fall. And it just goes on and on and on. And so as we become more weak and we lose function with mobility, we end up that we can't walk, we end up in a wheelchair, etc. So it can affect all different parts of the body. It can affect our speech. We could have tremors. We could have tremors with our arms and legs. And like just wherever your nerves are involved, it can affect that way. So multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease. It is the premise of what standard of care believes is that the immune system is attacking our own tissue. And I don't believe that. I believe that there is immune dysfunction. Yes, these infections, science knows that there's at least 17 different ways that they cause immune dysfunction, but it is not that your immune system has just gone crazy, awry for no reason at all. It is because we're dealing with infections. People that are newly diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, when I talk to them, because like myself also, I didn't know what MS was when I was diagnosed. I went to the experts. I'd never been sick in my life, and I lost all vision in my left eye, and I started getting weakness and tingling in my legs, terrible headaches, lots of insomnia, great fatigue. But I went there and I thought they were going to cure me because I'd never been sick. I didn't really know much about chronic disease. I never thought it could happen to me. And when I was diagnosed, the neurologist said, and this was at a leading university hospital MS clinic, one of the best in Canada on the West Coast. And he told me, yes, you have MS, but there's nothing you can do. MS will sometimes progress quickly, sometimes more slowly, but as the expert, I'm telling you, there's nothing you can do to stop the progression. You will be completely disabled in time. He said that we don't know what causes it and there is no cure. And I left his office feeling devastated. Maybe some of you can relate to that. Just how is this possible? How can you be healthy for 28 years of your life and then all of a sudden you're hit with this incurable disease? And a lot of people find that it is this big mystery. And what I teach is that it is not a mystery, it is caused by infection. So as we're going through this again, it is a little bit depressing, but please remember that I promise to bring it back to a real positive note at the end, because you can recover. And the sooner you treat the infections, the better. So with respect to multiple sclerosis, there are several different types. There is the clinically isolated syndrome where some people get an attack of some sort. It could be vision, it could be numbness or tingling, and it comes and goes. I had that actually. I had, when I was pregnant, when I would bend my neck, I would have like an electric shock running down my arm, and that disappeared. But then 6 months after my son was born, that's when I had the really serious optic neuritis. So sometimes people can have this isolated attack or symptom, and then they might not have it for years, or they might have it within a few years or a few months. So sometimes it is kind of separate. And then for the vast majority of people, when they're diagnosed, it is called relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, meaning that you might have this attack at some point. It could be mobility, it could be vision, etc. And then it subsides and you will get a lot of recovery, and very often full recovery in between episodes. But it's really important to understand, because a lot of people that start off with MS, they're newly diagnosed, the ones that I talk to, they think, well, I'm probably one of the lucky ones. I probably have a type of MS that is not really serious. It's like relapsing, remitting. I'm probably going to be okay. I'm going to do the right things. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to exercise. I'm not going to let this disease get me. There's no way. I'm such a stubborn person. It's not that simple. And the real important thing is to understand that most people that start off, the vast majority, over 80%, that start off with relapsing remitting, it does turn into progressive multiple sclerosis, where we don't get breaks anymore and we don't recover, where it is like more of a continual downhill, and we don't have the recovery in between. And it makes perfect sense when you talk about infections, because then you understand, as we become more infested with infections in the body, then our immune system is weaker and we don't get that recovery time in between MS attacks. Very important to understand that. So there is primary progressive and there is secondary progressive. So primary progressive, if people have that at the start, it's kind of a downhill much quicker. Secondary progressive, some people have that, it's just not as, the attacks are not as hard and as quick, and they don't recover in between, but it is downhill. And whereas relapsing remitting, you get breaks in between, a lot of times you'll have recovery. But for most people, again, what's really important to understand, over 80% of the relapsing remitting turns into progressive if you don't treat the infections. But if you do treat the infections, you're not going to have that issue. So what are the long-term concerns with multiple sclerosis? Because a lot of people don't understand what happens, because most of us, like myself, I didn't know anybody who had MS. Maybe you know one person, and maybe that one person is managing somewhat at this time. And when you look at people, you can't really know what they're dealing with. Like, yes, if they're in a wheelchair, then obviously they can't do certain things, but a lot of people suffer in silence and we just don't know. So what we see at the beginning is that when we're first diagnosed, it's more like fear of the future. We're coping, we're still working, we're not isolated, we're still functioning, we're socializing with people. Maybe we have some fatigue, right? And maybe we have to get extra rest. Maybe we're kind of simplifying our life a little bit, but it's mostly fear of the future. It's like MS is so unpredictable. Like, when is it going to hit, and where is it going to hit, and am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to live my life and take care of my kids and travel with my husband? And we've worked all our life, and now it's finally time to retire or close to it. And now, you know, is he or she going to have to take care of me, my partner? So a lot of it is the fear of the future at the beginning. And we can also start to develop cognitive issues where we get the foggy head and a lot of fatigue. Depression and anxiety really set in, especially the depression. The depression, not only just because it's an incredibly awful disease and it really robs us of our future and our hopes and our dreams, but also the chemicals produced from these infections, they really impact our brain in many ways. So we get anxiety, we get depression, etc. And then also, as time goes on, our mobility starts to be impacted. And when our mobility starts to be impacted and the cognitive function, sometimes it really impacts how we are able to do our work. Sometimes we can't work, even if we are too tired and we maybe don't have the mental clarity and we can't process things anymore like we used to, but especially when the mobility becomes an issue. So the combination of those two, that very often we end up not being able to work. And then also with not being able to work, we lose our independence. And so we can't drive. And so then we rely on other people. And that's a really big deal for people, is the loss of independence. Again, I'm not saying all of this to make you depressed. I want people that are newly diagnosed to have a true understanding of where this disease goes. This is the typical. And yes, some people get 5 years break where it, you know, maybe it's relapsing remitting for 5 years and then it moves into progressive, or maybe it's a year's time, you don't know, but this is where it goes for the vast majority of people if you don't do something about it, but you can. And it's knowing and understanding how this disease progresses in our life and how it impacts our life really empowers us. It makes us motivated to go in a different direction. So as we are no longer able to work, right, or we are not able to work anymore, not able to drive, also with the bladder issues and just the fatigue and just not knowing when you're going to feel well, a lot of students or a lot of people that I've talked to, they will become more isolated. So they won't make plans with family and friends because, is there a bathroom close by? Is there a possibility that I'm not going to have a bathroom. Can I get the wheelchair into this area? Is there wheelchair accessibility? And so all of these things, that am I going to feel okay to be out with my family and friends? And a lot of people, they just don't know, because from one day to the next, they could be completely wasted. And so they just stay home. They become isolated. They lose their joy. They become more and more depressed with all of this. And then also, we have to consider that as we're becoming more disabled, we have to make our home wheelchair accessible. We have to make our vehicles wheelchair accessible. There's a huge cost with that. And then also with getting help in the home, right? Because there will come a point in time where our family members and our friends are not able to support us. It's too much. They have to feed us. They have to dress us, right? They have to help us go to the bathroom. And this is the cruel reality of multiple sclerosis, but other neurological and chronic diseases also. So this is where it goes. And ultimately, we end up in extended care facilities. And I know of young people that are, in their 20s in extended care facilities that have multiple sclerosis. People that have died in their 20s of multiple sclerosis. So it is really our environment that makes these infections more active and makes us become disabled more quickly. But this is the life of MS. And it's really important to understand that. That is if you follow the standard of care that we have for it. And that is something that we now, which is really exciting, we now know that there are better options. There is a better approach. So the next question is, well, what causes multiple sclerosis? And with respect to the cause of MS, it's crazy that when I was diagnosed with MS, like 30 years ago, we still don't know what the cure is. We have spent millions and millions of dollars trying to find a cure for multiple sclerosis. And we still are no closer in finding a cure. We have more expensive treatments, and the treatments are, as I'm going to talk about, the treatments that we have right now, they're called disease-modifying therapies, and they are literally changing how our immune system works, functions. So we know that there's inflammation on the nerves. We know that the immune system is involved. So if we can just, like either wipe out some of our immune cells or prevent them from going in the central nervous system or trapping some of them in, like the T cells in their lymph nodes, that's what we're doing with the treatments. All the treatments that we've been using for many years, over 20 years, like the ones that came out first, like all the clinical trials, they look somewhat promising, that there's some advantage. And their goal is to slow down the progression of the disease. But in fact, when, like for some of the drugs that have been out for 20 years, they're looking back at really well done studies to see, did it actually slow down the progression of disease? And no, it did not. Some of the newer drugs are things that would suppress the immune system so strongly that we could be susceptible to other infections. For example, a rare brain infection. I'm not going to name any names, but I want you to do your due diligence. So this is for people that are newly diagnosed. And if you are newly diagnosed, do your diligence. Start to research some of the newer therapies, like the stem cell transplant. That one is a chemotherapy drug, which, look at the adverse effects. The adverse effects can be cancer. So what's worse, having an aggressive form of cancer or the MS? They're both awful, right? Or a rare brain infection that'll kill you. And then if we look at other things besides the disease-modifying drugs, things like CCSVI, which is to open up the veins, because it's been found that with multiple sclerosis and maybe other diseases too, that sometimes there's narrowing of the veins, and when they open it up, it gives them some symptom relief. But again, not treating the cause, very expensive. I've talked to a lot of people that have done it, and I have not found one person that I've talked to that has had long-lasting results from it. The next thing is just stem cell treatment. So there's this big rage about stem cells. Would it be something that I should do? Let me ask you this question. If you are infested with parasites, fungus, and bacteria, or if someone is with MS and they just have inflammation, so there's a war going on between the microbes that are causing the symptoms and our immune system, and we're shutting the immune system down, right? Does that make sense, or should we be treating the infections? So the key is that the stem cells, when we're taking them, and if we get them from good sources, if we are trying to use the stem cells to correct the inflammation, but we're not treating the infection, we're going to have more inflammation. So we can spend $15,000 to $20,000 per year on a stem cell treatment, and we have more inflammation within months after, and we have more damage, and then we've got to do another treatment. It's not treating the cause, it's treating the symptoms. So whatever you decide, whatever we decide to use for treating the cause is treating the cause and not treating symptoms. That is where people get the greatest recovery with multiple sclerosis. So again, the disease-modifying drugs, they are trying to manage the symptoms, trying to suppress the symptoms, but we still become disabled because those infections are there and they continue to damage and continue to make us disabled. Then there are things like the CCSVI and stem cell, which don't treat the cause, they treat symptoms again, and we still become disabled. So when we're looking for a treatment, it's important to get down to the root cause of the issue. And the root cause, I've shared tons and tons of research, videos on that MS is an infectious disease. And over the next few weeks here, I'm going to go deeper into it because so much more research is coming out and it's really exciting. So we've talked about the real depressing standard of care approach, the way that, you know, if we just follow what's recommended, what our life will look like, what we'll be taking, and these treatments that we're using they have really severe, strong adverse reactions, adverse effects too. Check it out yourself, look at it, read up on it. And so the key is that if we want to get our life and our health back, we have to find an approach that treats the cause. And I'm really excited to share with you that, remember all the videos I shared about how MS is caused by infection. So if you treat the infection, that's how I recovered, and that's how a lot of wellness champions have recovered. And so the Live Disease-Free approach, it understands that MS is an infectious disease. There is so much evidence, and not just that the science showing the different types of infections involved, but also people recovering. There are more and more people recovering. And if you'd like to look at some of the wonderful successes, go onto our website, livediseasefree.com, and you'll see a whole bunch of wellness champion success stories flying by, and you can listen to them, you can actually hear them. We are going to start posting them on YouTube also, and on Facebook. So, which is really super exciting. And I can share with you, this is a little ahead of time, just letting you know that when you catch the disease early, in the first few years of diagnosis where you're still high functioning, you can actually recover a lot quicker if you take the right steps. If you treat the infections really well, so we number one, we stop feeding them. Number two, we support the body. Number three, we treat the infections, and you do it over several cycles. You rebuild your natural defense and you build a healthy lifestyle. Those are the biggest steps. But when you do that, we have some students that become symptom-free in as little as 3 to 4 months. I can't promise that. It's not always standard, but it's like, if you're a really good implementer and you do the right steps and you treat it as quickly and as early as possible, you can have full recovery. And I know the wellness champions, all of us that have suffered, we want this information to get out because we want people to catch it early. We don't want them to go through what we went through with all of the suffering. So with the Live Disease-Free approach, we understand that MS is an infectious disease, and we understand that it's more of a state that we're in. So we are really out of balance. We are infested with parasites, and we have lots of evidence, both visual evidence and scientific evidence that's really starting to confirm it. We know that Lyme disease, the infections associated with Lyme disease, are usually present. And for many, many years, we've known that fungal overgrowth in the body and different types of fungi are a really big problem. So that's why we're never going to have a single pill cure for multiple sclerosis. It is an effort to decrease several different types of pathogens, disease-causing microbes in our body, and building our body up. And so what do we do to recover from multiple sclerosis? So again, we follow an eating plan that is super nutritious for our body, gives us lots of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients. We're also giving our body some fiber, as we are going to be building back the good microbes. That's what they love. That is their primary food. That is going to be building back our natural defense. And so as we decrease the food to the infections that are making us sick, we end up finding that the inflammation starts to go down and we start to have a little bit of symptom improvement. Then we start to support the body. We make sure we're having daily bowel movements. We decrease different toxins in the environment. We make sure we're sleeping really well. We go through this checklist for healing and we're feeling a little bit better then. But when we get to the treatment part, we look at our symptoms. And there are very specific symptoms for parasites. There are very specific symptoms for fungus and very specific symptoms for different infections associated with Lyme disease. And because we don't have good tests at this time, we use the symptoms to help us to decide which treatments we're going to use. And recovery really involves this holistic approach. And we use different types of therapies. So we will use we found with chronic disease that the herbs by themselves are not enough. So doctors are prescribing antiparasitic treatments, antifungal treatments, and people are just recovering a lot faster. They're tolerated really well. They feel really well on it. And within a week or so, people can start to see huge, huge shifts. So I wanted to share with you a few successes of people just in this past week. So we have a program where we help people, and it's a 3-month course, and I support them through the treatment phase. I wanted to share with you just some of the successes that have come in the past couple of days. So with one of the students, I'm not going to share names because these are students that are in right now, but she shared, these last couple of days, my body has been feeling so good and I am so happy. I'm really thankful to God and to you and for this life. So she shared, I am on day 11 of treating the parasites. Right now I'm just using one treatment and all is going really well. I was able to take 30 steps without my cane. Thank God. And she no longer has, she had sore thighs. A lot of my students can have a lot of pain, inflammation, even in the muscle tissue. I no longer have sore thighs. I was at the physiotherapist today and I was able to pedal a bike and to read a book at the same time, the first time in a very long time. And so actually walking those steps without the cane, I got that information in today. So we did do a call last night, but I added some of her successes. Another student shared, this past week, I started the antiparasitic medications and she's doing enemas. On Wednesday, I passed biofilm. So biofilm is this slimy coating, mucousy thing where the microbes are the disease-causing parasites and microbes are hiding under. So she passed some of that and some sort of a parasite. On Thursday, I passed another parasite and more biofilm. And on Wednesday, my legs had less spasticity and I kept forgetting to use my cane. I am over the moon happy. And then I went to put my pajamas on and I could lift my leg without assistance of my hands to put my leg into my PJ pants. This is the first time in at least a year. I am so excited. And then on Sunday she shared, so this was just a few days ago, I did an enema this evening and right after another critter came out and quite a bunch of biofilm. I'm having such amazing success. So this is what the students are doing, is that they are treating, we can see some of the larger parasites, but we can't see the smaller ones. But because people are having less spasms, they're becoming stronger, they're able to walk better, on and on, drop foot resolving, then we know that we're treating the large and the small. And there's too much to share with you on this video, but make sure to go back and watch some of my videos on MS is an infectious disease. I did a 5 or 6 part series. I will be going into more depth again over the next few weeks. And a couple more things I wanted to share. Another student just shared, I've just completed my first round of treating the parasites. I have more energy for longer periods of time. My hands no longer tingle, and I continue to work out. She's working out in a gym setting every day. I am feeling really well. And then another student she was tested by one of the practitioners that we're working with, who is really able to pick up these chronic dental infections and also infections that move into the body. So he treated her with a specific treatment, and just in 11 days of this one treatment, she no longer has any fatigue anymore, and she's already experienced a 5% increase in her mobility. Another student shared that she's in the middle of her first round of treatment. So this is hot off the press. This was from my call last night with the students that I work with that are recovering. So just in the middle of her first round of treatment, and she continues to improve. Last night, she slept through the night. She woke up before her alarm. So waking up feeling refreshed, how wonderful is that? Being able to make breakfast for herself and her daughter, seeing them out. And she was able to do a whole bunch of things, like she's taking a course, being able to study, going outside and potting a plant, and being busy all day. She's doing some deep cleaning in her house. She's been mentioning doing some cleaning of tiles, ceramic tiles, etc. Feeling so much more relaxed. I haven't experienced anxiety in many days. I've lost count. My cognitive function is improving so much. I look back and I see that it was like looking like I was trying to think through a solid wall. Now it feels like the cobwebs are finally lifting, and I'm feeling so much more clear. And then I just wanted to share this last one because this is incredible. So the people that I just shared with you, I believe that they are all students that have multiple sclerosis and recovering. I know for sure this student, Lisa, was diagnosed with PLS, and I'm not sure if you know what PLS is, but it is a slower progressing form of ALS. It's a really serious neurological disease. And she shared, I have felt tremendous improvements since I started this program. My balance is much steadier. I no longer have drop foot or muscle twitching. I rarely ever feel the need to use my cane while I'm walking outdoors. I have more energy and confidence, and oftentimes rise from sitting position just using the fingertips, my fingertips. I can walk up 5 steps without holding the railing. I haven't fallen in months, and I feel many glimpses of what used to be my normal life. I am stronger, my speech is improving, my hand no longer clenches as I lie in bed waiting to fall asleep. I sleep through the night, my bladder urgency has greatly decreased. My legs no longer feel like they weigh a ton, my body rarely stiffens, and so many other things. However, the greatest improvement of all is that I no longer have pain, and previously, if I was moving, I was in pain. I still have a long way to go, but there is no doubt in my mind that I am on the road to recovery, and I have prayed for this since my diagnosis. I wake up every morning excited to see what new improvements I might discover. God is good. My life motto, incurable doesn't mean impossible. And then she just posted just on our Facebook group. So with our students, we have a close Facebook group, and she posted, I did something today that I haven't done in 6 years. I walked up 11 steps of the staircase without holding the railing. It's starting to sink in that I'm actually recovering. How exciting is that? So I just wanted to share that with you because I'm going to be sharing a lot of research with you over the next few weeks so that you see that this is not my opinion. But research without results is not enough. And the reason that I have been able to live MS-free is because early on, I decided to take a different path. I decided to treat the cause. I was very blessed that I was introduced to the notion that MS is an infectious disease, because that was 30 years ago. There were a small handful of practitioners, like 5 books that I read from medically trained doctors that understood back in the day that MS and all chronic disease was stemming from infections in the body. And if you treat those infections, that the disease process will stop and you'll have a lot of recovery. So for those that are just newly diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I encourage you to make sure that you look at this second path, the path of treating the cause, the path of treating the infections. Whenever I talk to people, they're like, this makes so much sense. I've had infections in the past. I've had gut issues in the past. I've been on antibiotics in the past. we have to go back to common sense. We have to go back to really using our brain and understanding that it is not a mystery, that it is caused by infections. I'm going to go and see if you guys have any questions for me. And so again, before I go to the questions in the comments, the sooner we treat these infections, the quicker we recover. And again, this is if we treat them effectively. If we're using the right treatments, if number one, we're not feeding them, number two, we support the body, number three, we use the effective treatments. And this is where it takes a bit of work and a bit of trial and error because we don't have good tests. But you can see from the students that it's not taking years or many, many months if you're using the right treatment. It can go a lot quicker. So again, the sooner you treat the infections, the more recovery you will have, and the easier it is to treat them. It's still going to be work. I'm not saying it's just this magic pill cure, but the sooner you treat them, you can recover quicker if you're doing the right steps and you have the right support. All right, so I'm going to see if you guys have any questions for me. I see there's 29 comments. All right, so, and before I go to the comments too, I just wanted to share, if this is the first time you've found me and you're like, Pam, this sounds so interesting. If you're skeptical, watch some of my videos. I have tons and tons of videos. It's made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, but there is going to come a point in time where you have to treat the infections and you're going to need support with that. And we do help people. So if you want support, we do have a step-by-step plan that the Wellness Champions are following. So make sure to check it out. I have my masterclass training posted in the feed. It'll be above the video. It'll be in the feed where all the comments are. Watch it. And if you're at that place where you're like, this makes sense, Pam, I'm ready. I want to plan. I want to treat them. I want to recover and get back to my life. I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want to have fear of the future. I'm kind of scared of the treatments, and I don't do well with, that's with a lot of people. I have a lot of adverse effects to medications. They scare me. Just get your questions answered. Make sure it's a good fit for you, and make sure to listen to my masterclass training because I share tons and tons of, number one, information about the infections. Number two, the steps we take to recover. Lots of case studies, a lot of people that have recovered. So it gives you a lot more background information that I can do here. So hello, Hushma. Husma, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Beautiful name, haven't heard it before. Hi, Rhonda. So how soon can I get started? What you would do is watch my masterclass training, and from there, then if you're ready, right? Because this is an investment, because you're going to be trading and you're going to be working with me. It's a program. It is very cost effective, but it is, so if you're ready, if you're like, yes, I'm ready, then fill out the form. And once you fill out the form, there is a link, like once you listen to my masterclass training, there is a link, you click on it, you're going to fill out a form. My team goes through the form, all the answers that you put through, and then if they feel that you're ready, they will send you a link to my calendar, and we will also send you a Coach-a-thon replay. Listen to the Coach-a-thon replay because it talks all about the Academy, like all the steps in great detail, what we do, the time commitment, and the cost and everything. And as you go through all of that, and then when you want to talk to me, you can book a time in my calendar, and then we can talk, and you can get literally started within a week or less. Hi, KJ. You're late starting, you're starting to feel better, you can't wait to get started now. Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to support you. Hi, Augustus. What do you need? What do we need to ask our PCP on how to check for parasites? So I think your primary care practitioner that's probably what you mean. The problem is, and this is a really big problem, is that at this point, our medically trained doctors, they have not been trained in recognizing parasites or treating parasites. We don't have good tests. You can go ahead and if you go to them and say, well, I think I have parasites, and they'll say, okay, well, we'll do a stool test, and they'll do the stool test and they'll come back negative. And so they'll say, you don't have parasites, end of story. But the problem is our tests are not good. They are not picking up the parasites that we're dealing with. And so what we're doing is we are working with practitioners that are, number one, we're going by our health history, by our symptoms. Again, like we have an assessment forms that are like 10 pages long. And there are very specific symptoms for, even I talk about those little nematode worms that get in the central nervous system of people with MS. They're very specific symptoms for that. And so when you go through that, you can really see yourself. Then what we can do is I help my students to get samples of the treatments, and then they can go to a practitioner, and then they can be energy tested to see which of the treatments are more helpful for them. And then from there, they still have to find somebody, a practitioner, to write a prescription. So it is a bit of an involved process right now, unfortunately, at this time. So I can't give you any information on that, because your practitioner, depending on what country you live in, especially like in Canada, their hands are tied. They cannot write prescriptions for these anti-parasite drugs. They're not comfortable using them. They've never used them. They use antibiotics often, so they understand how to use them. They know about the adverse effects. But when it comes to parasite treatment, it's like a new frontier. It shouldn't be, because we've known about parasites for years. For goodness sakes, we're treating all of our animals for parasites. If they get parasites and we have to treat them, shouldn't we treat ourselves? Or we pick it up from many other places too. It's where you've traveled to, where your produce has come from, where you're eating in restaurants, you know, going into town, holding doorknobs, holding the shopping cart. They're everywhere. You can't hide from them. So the problem is that at this time, our standard of care does not recognize parasites. They don't have good tests. They aren't comfortable treating. Our pharmacies usually don't carry the treatments that we're using. So we're using specific pharmacies. And because they don't carry them, they try to order them in, and it's like astronomical how expensive they can be. So these are the challenges that my students face, and that's what I help them with to get access to all of that. So I'm going to go on to the next question. And what would be the initial approach to finding if parasites exist? So what you can do is you can look online and you can look up parasite symptoms, right? And there are a lot of common parasite symptoms. Those would be like worms in your intestines. But when you have neurological diseases, then the parasites have moved into different parts of the body. So we know with MS, what's really common are these small nematode, tiny little parasitic worms in the spinal fluid and the brain, as was discovered by Dr. Alan MacDonald. And I've shared, I can't remember if it was last week, but I share often his research. So the key is to understand that you can look at the symptoms and go, yes, I have symptoms of parasites, but the treatment part is hard. You can go to the health food store, you can find different herb, kits of treating parasites, but we have found that it just does not treat the infestation that we're dealing with. You might pass a few parasites, but you'll probably not notice a big difference in the symptoms, the neurological symptoms. That's what my students, if we could, trust me, we would. It would be that easy. But because we have learned about the drug treatments, it's just, there's just no comparison as to how much quicker people are recovering. It's really exciting. Kelly, hi. Hi, Norma. Hi, Polly. You so need this. Diagnosed in June the 2nd. So if you do the right steps, Polly, you can honestly, that's only if you take the right steps and if you implement really well. Again, I have no control over my students, but I do attract students that are so incredibly determined and dedicated to get well, so they don't mess around, and I guide them through the process. So make sure to watch my masterclass training, make sure to reach out and get all your questions answered and get on the road to recovery as quickly as possible. Hi, Mariana. So my masterclass training again is evidence, we also posted in the feed evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease. If this is new to you, you've never heard this before, make sure to go to that link. It's on our website, and scan through the small amount of studies that I put there together for you. It's not a small amount of studies, but that's just a sample of the evidence. And I'm going to be going through that in a lot more detail over the next few weeks. Hi, Andrew. Yes. Okay, so Andrew, we've posted, there's evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease, so go through that. I've got tons of videos. Just go through my videos on YouTube, Live Disease Free, Facebook, Live Disease Free. Pick and choose what you need, like especially the infection part, where I actually show some pictures of the worms my students are passing. The bigger worms may not cause the MS symptoms, but when people are releasing them, they feel so much better. Then Andrew, also watch my masterclass training. That would be really helpful. And then reach out. When you're ready, reach out. I'd love to support you. We've just had a lot of students join in the last couple of weeks. Hi, Anne. Hi, Mary Lou. Hi, Ruben. You've been living with MS for 19 years and no meds for 11 years. And that is very often the case. A lot of people that I talk to, they have come off the MS medication on their own. I don't ever tell people to come off medication. That's something that has to be a decision between the practitioner and the patient. But a lot of people feel better when they're not taking the medication. That's what they've told me. And again, what we're seeing and what's true is that if we're infested with these infections and we're suppressing the immune system, so we've got this enemy raging in our body and we are suppressing the soldiers, it just doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't, because when we have less soldiers, then these infections can just take over more of the body. We can have other infections moving in. We get different diseases. We have to take different medications, and it's a spiral downhill with our health. So I'm happy that you figured that out, Mary, because I'm not against medications, but they're not treating the infections. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Mary, Lisa. Oksana. What do I think about high-dose vitamin D? I personally do not feel comfortable with it. I've been following it. I've been talking to different practitioners that are using it. When you take high doses of vitamin D, it almost acts like a little bit of a natural steroid. Again, it's kind of suppressing the immune system, which is not the answer. So I do know some people that have taken high doses of vitamin D and they actually feel worse after. Again, whatever you do, focus in on treating the root cause. High doses of vitamin D does nothing for the infections. If you are deficient in vitamin D, then yes, take some. In the winter where we live, there are a lot of clouds. I don't get enough sunshine, then I do take some vitamin D. But in the summer, get some sunshine. Early in the morning when it's not so hot, get at least a half an hour a day. That is your best source. But if you're not deficient in vitamin D, then I personally would go for the most healthy source. Again, if you are deficient, it is fine to take some. Usually about 4,000 to 5,000 is fine, but those high doses of, 50,000 international units or more, et cetera, or even 10,000, I personally do not recommend it. There are so many things that we could do. When I start working with students, sometimes they're on 15 supplements. I always ask them, how long have you been taking them? Does it improve? Have you noticed any help? And if not, I personally wouldn't take it. Just some basic plant nutrition is fine. But a lot of supplements in theory are supposed to be good for us, but sometimes they're actually feeding the problem, feeding the infections. Yes, this will definitely help for Parkinson's also. All chronic disease, including cancer, autoimmune, all the neurological diseases, they are stemming from infections in the body. We don't have exactly the same infections in exactly the same areas. The same is true for MS. My students are not all on exactly the same treatment. That's why, number one, I can't talk about specific treatments because that is not allowed on social media. And number two, it would not be ethical because I don't know if that's what you need. But I do know that there are some similarities, but there are definitely differences in the protocols for each one of my students. But yes, I've worked with students that have Parkinson's also, and if you start to look, maybe you have a disease that isn't MS. Type in your disease and infection, do a search. There is something called PubMed, which is a database of research. You can look for PubMed and go to that and then type in Parkinson's and infection, Parkinson's and chronic infection. Parkinson's, well, we won't do dysbiosis because that's too hard, but you'll start to see that there are studies that they're looking at that people with Parkinson's have different microbes, and there's infections, and the low carb eating is really helpful for Parkinson's, etc. So you'll start to see that it's all the same. For the vast majority of parasites, fungus, and bacteria, they love carbohydrates, right? So if we decrease the carbs, they're not going to be as happy, they'll be less active, and we start to have a little bit of symptom improvement. Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Andrew. You really want to flush out and deal with all those silent infections. Yes, well, you need to get on a different path. I don't know if you have a chronic disease. The key is that once people recover, they understand the importance of doing a really good parasite treatment at least once a year, possibly twice a year, as prevention, and knocking back fungus also. And again, I do love the herbs, but they are really not as effective as the treatments that we're using. They're much more effective. Hi, Dana. Hi, Catherine. What about the Walls protocol? So I love Dr. Terry Walls. I love the work that she's doing. She has been really focused on mitochondrial dysfunction and diet. So she comes from the functional medicine approach, and the functional, they really mean well, let's put it that way. And they're really trying to use a holistic approach. So there's a lot of good things, trying to use a holistic approach, bringing high nutrition and supplements again, etc. But again, the key is that the mitochondria are little energy factories inside our cells, and they're suffering when we have all kinds of chronic disease. So we can either take a ton of supplements to try to support them, or we can treat the infections that are causing the mitochondrial dysfunction, and then they just operate normally. So my philosophy, and what we're seeing working really well with the students, is get down to treating the infections as quick as possible. And that way you need less supplements, you recover quicker, you save a ton of money. And with the eating plan, I know she started off paleo, and I know that she is moving more towards much lower carb. So I'm sure that her followers are finding a benefit with that for sure, because we have found the same thing. So with Dr. Terry Walls, she just hasn't been around as long as I have, and that's probably the biggest thing. I really hope to collaborate with her in the future. I think that it's really important for all of us to collaborate together. I have my biggest thing that I haven't done well is keeping my nose to the grind. We've been working really hard. I've worked with over 600 students. You know, what works, what doesn't work. That's why I have not been speaking a lot, but it is time to really start to collaborate more with other and to share what we found and to bring this out. So we do have a practitioner members area that our students are sharing with doctors and practitioners, different, not just doctors, but any integrative practitioners. So we are getting the word out, but it's really important we do this a lot quicker. So again, with her protocol, she is not focusing on treating she doesn't know that yet. She doesn't know the parasite component. None of us did. I didn't either. I had no idea. I knew about fungus for years. And over the last 10 years, we've been hearing a lot about Lyme. And yes, parasites are an issue, but we really had no idea how significant the infestation of parasites are in people with chronic disease. It is shocking, literally shocking. I have so many pictures of large parasites from my students, and those are the large ones, and the small ones can cause a lot of pain and agony in us also, but we can't see those. So what do I think about hormone imbalance and MS? It's really important. This is my belief, again, with hormone imbalance. When there are shifts in our hormones, I'll just finish up here. We'll do a couple more questions. So when there are shifts in our hormones, the infections can become more active. So we might think that it is the hormones that are the problem, but it's just that, let's say when progesterone becomes higher, then our blood sugar level is higher, the inflammatory immune response is lower, so the infections are more active, so we have more symptoms. So it's not that the hormones are the problem, it's that we have infections, and when we have a change in our biochemistry inside of our body, those infections are more active and we have more symptoms. As we treat the infections, women go, oh, I guess I wasn't premenopausal and it's not perimenopausal, and it's just the infections because I don't have the hot sweats anymore. I don't have the mood swings. I don't get the bloating. I don't get the headaches. All the pain, all of that settles down. So it's not the hormones. Yes, we could have a nutritional deficiency for sure. And yes, we want to get our nutrition up, but most of it is caused by infection. So what I see is that when we take hormones internally, whether it is a bioidentical, synthetic, birth control, hormone replacement therapy, it changes our biochemistry in our body, and it actually promotes these infections. We see more endometriosis, we see more fibroid cysts, we see more inflammation like in arthritis, things like that. We see an acceleration in the diseases. So the infections are becoming more active, they're happier, and we have more symptoms. So I would never personally take hormones. I wouldn't, just with what I know. And as you treat the infections, women say, oh, my hormones are balanced again, right? High nutrition, get the bad microbes down, get the good ones up. And of course, all of the steps we do is decreasing toxins in the environment. And people just, myself, I went through menopause, didn't even know it. Like just things stopped. It's like, oh, I guess I've gone through menopause. That's how it is supposed to be. It's not common because we're so out of balance with our microbes. Hi, Kurt. Hi, Maureen. Right. So the key is, Maureen, to understand that your neurologist just doesn't know what he or she doesn't know, hasn't been trained in this. It's very new, and they are experts in the MS drugs. So that is their expertise. And I'm not like, that's just the reality of what it is. And if you like those drugs, if you feel they're going to help you, that's where you go, because that's what they have to offer. But it is not a cure. We still become disabled. We suffer all our life. Hi, Lakey. Lakey. There we go. I got it right. Beautiful name. Mia, you're hoping that 10 years with MS is not too late. Absolutely. Please get started. It is never too late. You can always stop the progression, and you can have a lot of recovery. A lot of people come off of all their meds, antidepressants, working with their doctor. Not me, I'm not the practitioner, but I'm just empowering them to play that active role so that they can actually reach their health goals. Your wife is the one dealing with MS, still recovering from a bad relapse. I'm so sorry. Make sure she watches my masterclass training, watch my other videos. Awesome. Thank you, Michael, for sharing. You guys are such wellness champions. Elaine. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go. We have gone a long time. We've gone an hour. So again, Pam, does taking antibiotics help? Taking antibiotics by themselves is not the answer. So sometimes we have infections, bacterial infections associated with Lyme disease, but the problem is we're also infested with parasites that are infecting us with the bacteria. So if we don't treat the parasites first and the fungus first, we can knock back the different types of bacteria for sure. But if we don't treat those bigger problems, we will never clear the Lyme disease. A lot of people that feel that they have Lyme disease and test positive for Lyme, it's actually a parasitic infestation that's giving most of their symptoms. I can't go into great detail about it, but I do share on different videos. I'm going to let you guys go because I know that there are more and more questions. I will be back next week, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live disease free. Make sure to invite other people. Let's get a discussion going. And I'm going to be sharing, we're going to start with a general evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease. And then we're going to start to take a deeper dive into the different topics. This is truly where the biggest awareness has to be coming out, is that there is so much research happening, but we're not hearing about it. And probably our neurologists are not, they have a job, right? They are really busy people. They're doing what they've been trained, and they're not being exposed to this information. So you guys are the champions. You guys have to share this with other people, with practitioners. I can't do this by myself. Thank you so much for all the love. I just really appreciate you so much. And again, next week it is evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease. If you're at the place where you're ready, watch my masterclass training. reach out to me. You can become a wellness champion within less than a week, and you can start on your journey. You can finish this year off and start next year with a brand new lease on life. Take care and bye-bye for now.